I primarily remember the cross, seeing Christ on the cross, and just curious about that because I've never seen symbolism in Islam. Islam is not a faith of depiction of character or anything like that, let alone a picture of God. So when I saw the statue of Christ on a cross, I was genuinely curious why anyone in their right mind would pray to a God that's getting killed, basically.
Explain that a little more for us.
Yeah, because normally when I read the Quran, I read about a God who is unbelievably powerful. He's gracious and merciful, but at the same time, he's unbelievably just. He talks about how he's the master and we're the slaves. So I don't see a God dying. I don't see someone as strong as that dying. You know, you look at the superheroes in comic books; they're always like buffed up with muscles and everything. I do not think a God, you know, in Christianity would be depicted by a symbol of death. So that's why I was very, very fascinated by why anyone would pray to someone who's weak.
Your search then, as you grew older and finding Jesus, actually started in a Tim Hortons donut shop.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was at the university pursuing a degree, and no one at this point evangelized really that much. So when I saw this person standing right outside of Tim Hortons, he literally just asked me 2 questions. And I'm guessing it's an evangelist because it was very Jesus-driven. And he asked me what the Quran talked about salvation and if I knew personally who Jesus Christ was.
And when he asked you those questions, your response was?
I told him that I knew Jesus better than he did because I'm a Muslim, and the Quran has an accurate depiction of who Christ is because it was the final revelation given by God.
Now, did he try to challenge that at all?
No, he just asked me to look it up for myself.
You questioned the Muslim faith when you saw a friend's dead body.
At first, my pursuit for God, or in this case in the Bible, I was more so of a curiosity. I didn't see my eternity on the line. When one of my best friends passed away and I saw his dead body in the casket, for the first time ever, the reality of death hit me. And I realized that, you know, I was really living in a self-righteousness sort of idea where my works is going to get me to heaven. But then I started asking myself, what would make me go to the same heaven as an imam who does his 5 daily prayers, who's way more devout than I would be? And I called myself devout. So I was really, really challenged with the idea that maybe the Bible is onto something. Maybe I myself can't save myself. So now the challenge of knowledge turned into the challenge of where am I going to go?
Instead of maybe getting better, things kind of got more worse and challenging because you came to a point where you wanted to take your own life.
I basically hit a point where I did not know between the 2 books. I had the Quran open on chapter 112, and it talks about God being one, he was not begotten, doesn't have a son. And then I had the Bible open on John 3:16. So basically everything the reverse of the Quran. Had them both side by side, Rob, and I was like, okay, God, it's been 3 days, I couldn't even sleep properly. I was having a conversation with God just like how the Christians did, and I said, if you are truly who you say you are, come down and show me, or I'm going to come up and ask you. Because in Psalm 139 verse 8, David says, where do I go from you that I may hide from your spirit? If I go to heaven, you're there. If I make my bed in Sheol, you're there. So I thought to myself, even if I ended up in hell, even if I did that, at least I can have a conversation or some sort of an interaction with the Lord, asking him, because at that point, it didn't even matter where I was headed. I just wanted to know who he was, and it was driving me nuts.
So your hunger for God was at a point where God, either you show up or I'm going to take my life and I'll meet you.
Exactly.
Now, how close did you get to taking your life?
So I ended up swallowing 22 sleeping pills, and I woke up in the psych ward. And that was a very different experience on its own, because the Lord intervened many, many times in my life, you know, through the poverty and through the sicknesses that I've had. And this time he also intervened. And I didn't understand why, because he wouldn't answer me, but he's going to keep me on earth for more curiosity. So I didn't understand what was going on with the Lord. But thankfully he intervened, because looking back now, I was definitely not headed where I thought I was headed.
There was a day, August the 8th, 2015, that everything changed for Mustafa.
Absolutely. So in 2015, I was basically getting more and more Christian in my Muslim faith. So what that meant was my 5 daily prayers, I began understanding they were robotic. They were no longer coming from my heart, because there was only one person I was going to look at, and that person happens to be God that took a form of man. And then on August 8th, I had the Bible open on John 3:16, and I told myself, because my mind, historically I can prove Jesus, archaeologically I can prove Jesus, but my heart wasn't quite there. It was almost there. So I gave myself this challenge. I don't cry very much, Rob. So I said, I'm going to read John 3:16 as many times as it took until I started crying, because that's when I knew now my mind and my heart are in tune, so I can start believing in the Lord. And it took me 2 hours reading the Bible, just John 3:16, that's all I read, and I started bawling my eyes out. And that's when I accepted Jesus into my heart.
You've got people's attention. They're watching. Can you tell them today, looking back, and answering the question, why Jesus for Mustafa?
Absolutely. Because he's the only way. If Jesus is truth, then all the other ideas are a lie. And you don't want to buy into any other idea. And you can't make it yourself. That's why God shows you his love by sending you his son to die for you on the cross, so that you don't have to worry about being right enough. You're clothed in his righteousness, and you're made holy in you. And that's the God you want to follow, because he loves you.